Hello, this is Carla Cross, and thank you for joining me today. This is a very important subject. And by the way, it's a subject that I've found most trainers don't really understand or use. And the reason this subject is so important is that it's actually the key to teaching with purpose. Now, this is excerpted from my Train the Trainer online course to certify trainers in Washington State to create clock hour approved courses, and it's also certified for 15 clock hours. And I also teach this as a live course called Instructor Development Workshop. So let's jump right in and see what's going on with objectives and why they're so important. Do you feel like this when you're going to present? Well, a lot of people do. And even though we're really good talkers and we know our subject, and so we think we can teach. After all, we can talk and we know what we're talking about. But there's a lot more to teaching than talking. And I call that actually sharing. Does it have value? You betcha it has value. But it's not actually all there is to teaching. Just telling somebody how you do it doesn't mean they can do it. For instance, I can tell you how I play a Beethoven sonata because I'm a pianist. But does that mean you can play it? No, not on your life. You have to practice. So I want you then to learn how to use these objectives to figure out how to teach so you're really teaching, not just sharing, and actually how to create that course at the same time. Now, I just saw this lack of it in action because I attended a Train the Trainer course, and the people were supposed to do presentations, and they were handed a couple, 3 pages of a presentation to do. One of the people said they were all to follow this outline, and it told how to teach. Well, this one person decided not to use that and just winged it, and she got all confused, didn't know where she was, and she said, wow, you see, I can just do this so easily. And what she was really saying is, I just get up and share and it all works out fine. Well, sure it does, because that's sharing, but that's not teaching. So I'm going to show you how to actually teach so that you always know where you are, you always know where you're going, and even if you're given a bad course to teach, you can arrange it so you can teach it well. So this is what I want you to do first. I want you to think of the course you're teaching, and I want you to envision their end in mind. You got it? You're at the end of the course. I've got 2 questions for you. Here's the first one. What do you want your student to be able to do better? So I want you to think of those students walking out of the classroom. What are they going to be able to do better? And the second question I want you to ask is, who is the end recipient? That is, what do you hear and see your student doing or saying to your end recipient? And does this student need to practice this in class to learn and retain and get competent? Let me give you an example. Let's say I'm teaching a class on how to make a sales call to a for sale by owner. So who is my student? My student, of course, is the agent in class. And what do I want that student to be able to do to make a sales call effectively? Now, who's the end recipient, though? That's not the student. That's actually the for sale by owner. So how do I assure that that student is going to effectively make a sales call to a for sale by owner? What I have to do is design a role play so that that student can actually practice in class. Because if the student doesn't practice in class, how in the heck do they know they can do it? And so many times we skip this part. Good example is my old example, Bob. Bob was in my office, and he sat right in front of my office. My office was glassed in. This was when I was managing. And Nada, who sat in the cubicle next to Bob, came running in and said, Carla, you've got to stop Bob. And I said, stop him. What's he doing? Because I could look at him out there. I knew he was making phone calls, but he wasn't like, I don't know, being disruptive, I didn't think. And she says, no, no, you don't understand. You got to stop him. He's making sales calls. And I went, what do you mean? I've been trying for 6 months to get that guy to make sales calls. She goes, no, no, you have to hear what he's saying. Go and listen. So I walked out there and I stood by Bob and I listened. Now, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to say what Bob was saying. I want you to pretend you're the end recipient of this call. So when I'm done with my Bob script, I want you to naturally answer what you would naturally answer to Bob's question. Here he is. Hi, this is Bob from ABC Realty. Don't have time to talk now, do you? What's your answer? Well, of course not. So Bob's little subconscious was protecting him because he did not want to actually sell real estate. So the worst thing he could think of was to get a lead. So his subconscious designed his script to meet his subconscious needs. Now, I also think probably that whoever taught Bob how to call him for sale by owner didn't have him practice in class and get feedback, because if this person would have had him practice in class and get feedback, he would have heard really quickly that all that time and energy he was expending to supposedly get a lead from a for sale by owner was not working. So I want you to always think about, what do you want the student to be able to do? And who is that end recipient? So do you need to have them practice in class? We leave this out, and so we get these weirdo things coming out of our mouths because we're Bobs. Don't be a Bob, right? So here's what you want to do and don't want to do to assure that you're actually teaching and not just rambling around sharing. Well, first of all, here's what not to do. This is what we usually do. We start writing down everything we know about the topic. It's a kiss of death. First of all, we don't have any organization. We don't have any purpose. Remember at the beginning I said the objectives were going to give you purpose? So I want you to start with purpose. So don't write stuff down. So here's step one in designing that course or designing how you're going to teach. Craft your learning objectives. Here's what learning objectives are. They're what the student will know, be able to do, and how they'll feel about it. That's the end in mind. So what they'll know, and that's what we teach so much. That's what we regurgitate, that a lot of information. You'll know this, you'll know that, You'll know what a for sale by owner is. You'll know what their needs are, all well and good. But that's not just what we want Bob to be able to do. We want Bob to be able to effectively make a sales call to a for sale by owner. So the skill is what they can do with all that information you're regurgitating. And finally, it's attitude. How will they feel about it? Well, obviously, Bob didn't feel right about it because his subconscious made him actually be sure that he didn't get any leads. So we want to be sure that people walking out of the class feel confident and happy, enthusiastic to put to work what you've taught them to do. So let me show you then some learning objectives. Now, in Training the Trainer, I have all the learning objectives as I do in instructor development. I'm not going to have to share them all with you, but in the big class, I have people identify whether they're knowledge, skill, or attitude. Now, why do you write them? Because they tell you where you want to go with the course. They don't just say, share everything you know. So you start to write an objectives, use this sentence every time. And by the way, objectives need to be at the beginning of every course academically. In the state of Washington, we have to provide objectives when we submit a course, and we have to tell where we're going to teach them. Now, sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, because some objectives are overall, like attitude. But at least the state is trying to help us teach from objectives. So let's say that, for instance, in this course, Train the Trainer or Instructor Development Workshop, I teach you how to craft and give a persuasive presentation. Why is this important? Because almost all of us are up in front of people to persuade them to something, and especially you affiliates. So one of my objectives would be to define what a persuasive presentation is. And so I give you that process, what it is, and I even draw an analogy there. And then the skill objective is be able to create and present a persuasive presentation. So what do you think I'm having you do in class? Yep, I'm having you give us your persuasive presentation, because otherwise, how do you and I know you can put the concept to work? We don't. And when you get out of here, I want you to be able to do it. Here's the last objective: with confidence. It kind of falls into place as an attitude objective if you've accomplished the first two, and especially the skill objective, be able to craft and present a persuasive presentation. So once you do it, you're confident you can do it, because guess what? You did it. That's why objectives are so important, and it's so important that we hit all three of them. Can you start to see how different this is from just getting up and willy-nilly sharing? Now, again, there's nothing wrong with sharing, but it's just a little bit of training. So here are some tips on writing learning objectives. First, it has to be from the student's objective. So when you're writing these, I want you to sit in the student's seat and look up at you, the instructor, and say to yourself, what'll I know when I get out of here? What'll I be able to do when I get out of here? And how am I going to feel about it? So it's from the student's perspective, not the instructor. It has only one type of objective per sentence, so you don't string, know how to in one sentence, because know how to, is it a skill or a knowledge objective? I don't know. So you only have one per sentence. And it's focused on a specific action students will be able to do, not too broad. When I'm teaching this, I use the flute. I'm a flutist, just like Lizzo, right? And I bring somebody up and I say, how would you like to learn to play the flute? And, somebody says, oh, yeah, I'd really like to. And I ask the students, how long do you think it'll take? Well, guess what? It takes a year or two to learn to play the flute, even play it a little bit. Well, they don't have a year in class. So I take the flute apart and I just use the head joint and I say, okay, how would you like to learn to make a sound on the flute? And they go, yeah, that sounds good. So I say, okay, here's the skill objective. As a result of this workshop, you will be able to make a sound on the flute. So I literally take the flute apart. That's limiting my objective. And I make a limited objective so the students don't run out of the room because it takes too long. And I'm sure that we can reach the objective, and everybody I've ever taught can make a sound on the flute. Now, how do we know they can make a sound? I make a sound because I demonstrate. But do you know that that person up there can make a sound? No, you don't, until what? They take that flute and they attempt to make a sound. And guess what? They keep at it till they make the sound, because they're not going to give up. And that's the key of teaching a skill. So don't make it too broad. Now, I've shown you how to make objectives work. So I've got a test for you. Are you ready? What's wrong with these learning objectives? As a result of this 1-hour workshop, students will know all about contracts. In 1 hour? Sure, you betcha. And what's the other thing that's wrong? We'll know all about. You're not going to teach them all about, and that shouldn't just be the objective. The second one, as a result of this workshops, students will know how to tie a square knot. Know how. It's either know what it is or be able to tie it. That's why you always use that sentence will. And then if you put the be able, that's the action, and you want to be able to see them do it during the class. That's the only way you know. that they can do a presentation, or they can make a sound on the flute. Last one. As a result of this workshop, I will tell students all they need to know about role playing. That's great. I love to do that, because I don't have to have the students do anything. I don't have to see how well I taught or not. What's wrong with this? Well, objectives are not from the instructor's perspective. That's why it's always wrong to get up and say, we're going to cover a whole lot today. I think just throw the sheets over the students and go out and do something else. So it's always from the student objective, and all they need to know. You're never going to do it, and that's a real wishy-washy objective. So what we've done today is a crash course on writing and teaching to objectives, because when you write these objectives, then it shows you how to contour your course and how to teach your course. So it shows you how to teach each module. So if you have a behavioral objective, a skill objective that you want to accomplish in that module, guess what? You have to get to the point where you're teaching them to do something, and they are doing it. It keeps you on track and on time, so that you can time out. And in my bigger courses, I teach you how to time all your sections, so if you have people do an exercise, how long it's going to take you. It helps restrict you, oh, I love this, from information regurgitation. I think I even spelled regurgitation right, because it is so maddening to hear somebody get up and talk as fast as they can go and tell you everything they know, so you know everything they know, but you haven't learned to do anything. It provides a roadmap for others to teach your course if you want. And when you write a course, you may want to sell it. I've sold my courses to all of the major franchises internationally. And every time I do that, of course, there's how to teach it so that I know it's going to be taught properly to the objectives. It assures you provide real, practical, and action-oriented value to your attendees, so they don't walk out and just say, hey, JJ was really wonderful, but I could never do that. You want them to say, I can do that. Thank you, JJ, for helping me do that. Helps you create exciting teaching methods to keep attendee attention and interest. And if you were in my big course, the next thing we would do was to take a look at all the different ways one can teach. Those are called, by the way, delivery methods. So there's not just one way to teach. There's not just lecture talking. There are several ways to teach to reach your objectives. Now, can you see how much skill and power you have when you learn these things? So much more powerful than just having the information and getting up there for an hour and sharing it. So I hope you've learned a whole lot today about objectives, that they can keep you on track. They can take you to a higher level. They can give you teaching methods. So do you want more? Well, take a look at my distance learning course, Train the Trainer, which is on my website at Cross Institute, or my instructor development workshop, which I do several times a year in Washington, and I'd love to bring it to you. Or I'd love also to come and work with your trainers and presenters on presentation skills and course development. Of course, each presentation is customized to meet your needs. So contact me. You can just contact me by going to one of my websites, Cross Institute or Carla Cross with the contact, or you can email me at carla@carlacross.com. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've learned a whole lot, and I hope you can learn objectives and use them to teach, and I'd love to work with you.